Tanya sat in the back seat of her boyfriend Ivan's car on a bright fall morning. It was beautiful outside, and she was excited to be traveling. Her friend Masha was sitting in the front seat. They were both 15. Masha had nearly been murdered at the beginning of the summer after she was stabbed repeatedly in a random hate crime. They were both dressed modestly in sweatpants, and Tanya wore a fleece jacket, and Masha wore a large black sweatshirt. All three of them were wearing the boots from their World War II reenactment uniforms. Ivan had decided to take Masha to shoot a full auto M-16. Masha looked ahead as Ivan drove down the I-95. The fall sun was still rising in the sky, covering everything in the beautiful and magical light that only the morning sunlight could bring. It hit her hard, but it didn't feel particularly bittersweet, and she didn't feel like crying. But she was suddenly struck by this wondrous moment and appreciative beyond any words that she was able to experience it after what had happened over the summer and how close she had come to not surviving when she was brought into the hospital. The view of the road was beautiful. It was 2005, so most of the drive to Spotsylvania was uncluttered by the express lanes, and very little had been built along the road. The median and the side of the road were both covered in tall trees that had recently lost their leaves. Masha and Tanya both thought that it was incredibly beautiful, and without needing to be explicitly aware, they both realized that it would become an intense source of nostalgia. Even though Spotsylvania was far from D.C., Masha was actually having fun on the ride because it was so beautiful and because she was with Tanya, who had spent the entire week in the hospital with her and comforted her when she woke up from horrific recurring nightmares, where she had awoken to discover that she was profoundly disabled. Tanya had been the only person outside her family who truly cared about her, and sometimes Masha felt overwhelmed by the fact that she didn't deserve it. Masha had met Tanya when they were 12, after they started middle school. Shortly after, at the suggestion of one of their friends, Masha had started using the name Masha because she hated the name Mary. Her name was Mary Collins, and Tanya's name was Tanya Black, and neither of them were from a Russian-speaking country. Only Ivan was, and he was adopted. As they passed Quantico, Ivan announced that they were getting close. "How much longer is it?" Masha asked. "It probably won't be much more than a half hour." Masha sat quietly and continued looking out the front window. The scenery this far from D.C. was beautiful, and she felt incredibly lucky to be able to experience it. At 15, it filled her with wonderful, almost numinous feelings. The trees on both sides of the highway made it feel like they were out in the middle of nowhere. After another 15 minutes, Tanya recognized where they were and told Masha that the ride was almost done. They continued on the highway for another several miles before getting off at the Thornburg exit, which Masha really thought was in the middle of nowhere. Ivan said they were about to be there, and it was the last stop before they were there. He pulled into a large convenience store, and they all got out. Masha followed Tanya inside, feeling strangely out of place. It felt like an old convenience store that hadn't changed since the late 1970s. In a strange way, the tall leather and Cursa boots they were wearing made Masha feel like they were rednecks and slightly less out of place. Masha walked around the store close behind Tanya. They talked quietly together as they looked around. Tanya used her allowance from Ivan to buy candy and soda for both herself and Masha, who was extremely grateful. After the visit to the store, they got back into the car and continued the rest of the way to the house where they were going shooting. Masha watched as they pulled up to a rural house after a long drive down the country road. It had a strange, timeless feel to it, like she was being taken back to the late 1970s or 80s, since the house had barely changed since then. Her own house had barely changed since then, but it didn't feel the same. Ivan pulled slowly off the driveway and stopped. Masha got out after Tanya and Ivan, who went around to the trunk. Ivan started getting stuff out. He handed the rifle case to Masha, who was suddenly surprised in a briefly delayed reaction, but didn't say anything. She took the case and waited for Ivan and Tanya to take the rest of the stuff. She watched as they took out large metal ammunition containers and military bags. It felt very intense to her. Masha followed them to a table that was set up where they set everything down. Tanya thought that Masha looked strangely cute with her large boots, which were already starting to get dirty. Ivan started to unpack everything. He took out the rifle first and set it down on the table after making sure it was clear. Masha looked at it, almost apprehensively. It seemed strange to have with them. The ribbed plastic felt creepy in person. After getting everything set up, Ivan helped show Masha how to hold the rifle. He carefully positioned it as she held it. She looked through the aperture at the front sight. It was a strange feeling. Once Masha was comfortable holding the rifle, Ivan showed her the selector and told her to lower it one position to semi-automatic and leave it there. Then he passed out hearing protection and safety glasses to everyone. As Masha held the M-16, Ivan held it up and then handed Masha a magazine with 5 rounds and told her to insert it and to make sure that she pushed on it to make sure that it was all the way in. She inserted it easily, and then Ivan told her to grab the left side of the charging handle and pull it all the way back and then to let go of it. Masha grabbed it, thinking that it was extremely short. It was hard for her to pull it back, but she was able to get it back all the way and then let go. The bolt slammed hard. Ivan told her that the magazine had 5 rounds and she could shoot whenever she was ready. Masha aimed at the target and got ready. She began to squeeze the trigger, anxious and unsure of how it would feel. Then the trigger suddenly broke without being pulled back, and the rifle went off. There was a loud crack, and the rifle recoiled, not strongly, but enough to be felt. The bullet exploded on the steel target with a loud bang. That was good, Ivan said. Don't try to anticipate the recoil or compensate for it. Keep a firm hold on the gun to control it, but don't try to compensate. Masha fired another round. It was less startling this time. The feeling was indescribable. Then she slowly fired the remaining rounds. They all hit the target. Very good, Ivan praised. Masha was unsure of how to feel, but she was unquestionably excited. She just stared at the M-16 as she set it down on the table. Ivan said that he had another magazine with 5 rounds. He loaded the rifle and handed it to Masha. She shot all 5 rounds, hitting the target every time. Once Ivan saw that Masha could control the rifle, he told her to push the selector all the way to full auto. It's going to jump around a lot now, he told her, as he handed her another magazine with 5 rounds. Masha loaded the magazine and then hit the ping-pong paddle on the left side of the gun. She aimed at the target and pulled the trigger. The gun jumped around wildly, and only 2 rounds hit the target. But Masha was suddenly excited. She felt alive. It wasn't just exciting, it felt truly beautiful, because Masha realized how close she had come to never experiencing a moment like that. If she had died that night when she had been repeatedly stabbed, she never would have been able to experience this moment. She didn't cry, but she started to feel intensely emotional. Ivan gave her another magazine and told her, "Try to hold it steady." Masha loaded it and then aimed and pulled the trigger. She got 3 rounds on target this time, but the ammunition was gone in an instant. Ivan gave her another magazine with 5 rounds that disappeared almost instantly. Once he saw that she could control the rifle on fully automatic, he told her that he was giving her a 30-round magazine. "Try to shoot in short bursts," he said. Masha loaded and aimed at the target, then let out a 4-round burst, then another. It was incredible, she thought, as she was filled with joy. She shot the rest of the magazine at the target. It was the most excitement that she had ever had since she could remember. Ivan gave her another magazine with 30 rounds, and she repeated the process. She was amazed by how quickly the ammunition ran out, but she still had the most fun that she had ever had. Then the realization hit her that she was only experiencing this moment because she had survived. Ivan said that they needed to take a break from shooting to allow the gun to cool down. While Masha was holding the gun, She decided to try holding the rifle by curling 2 fingers on her left hand and then hooking it through the sight post and pulling the rifle into her shoulder. As soon as she got her fingers in and started pulling the rifle into her shoulder, Ivan saw what she was doing and shouted, "No!" Then grabbed the rifle with one hand and pointed it down and grabbed Masha's forearm with the other and pulled it out of the front sight post. "Follow me," he shouted as he dragged her toward the door of the house. He stopped for a second and then rapidly pulled out his keys to unlock the door and then rushed inside. He quickly took Masha straight to the sink and then turned on the cold water and shoved her hand under it. Then he started manipulating her small hand under the water. He noticed that she had really pretty hands that weren't skinny or bony, but didn't get distracted. "Does it still hurt?" he asked after he finished. "I didn't feel anything," Masha said. "I guess that's good then," Ivan said, then paused. "You didn't do anything dangerous to anyone else, but you technically touched the gas block and you could have been severely burned." Masha followed Ivan back outside to where Tanya was waiting. They waited for a few minutes for the gun to cool down. Masha mentioned that the experience of shooting the rifle was the most fun that she had ever had. After a while, Tanya took a turn shooting the gun on full auto. Masha was amazed by how experienced she was. After they finished shooting, they packed up and got back into the car to go get lunch at Sheetz. Masha sat in the front again and looked out the window at the scenery. She was unquestionably exhilarated by the experience, but in the back of her mind, she also had bittersweet feelings trying to claw their way out. She looked out at the houses that they passed by, many of them likely built during the 1960s or 70s. The timeless 70s aesthetic and the nostalgia that it evoked from when Masha was a baby triggered unpleasant memories of when she had almost been murdered, and the nightmares that she had since then because of the intense nostalgic connection. It also evoked her childhood, because it was the aesthetic that she grew up with. It was strange how things could be so complicated like that. On the way back, they stopped at Sheetz, not far from the house they were at. They all went inside. Tanya noticed how dirty their boots were and thought they looked like they had been working on some weird redneck project outside. It was fun, though. They all got lunch, with Tanya buying lunch for Masha with her allowance from Ivan. They all had lunch together, and it was a beautiful moment, with Masha completely forgetting about what had happened over the summer. Masha had a lot of fun with Tanya during lunch that day, with it becoming an indisputably magical moment to remember. It was one of the few times that she had laughed so hard or had so much fun since she had been attacked. It was a moment that helped teach her that she just should accept happiness whenever it comes to her. And it's not something that should or even can be searched for. She has to be ready and willing to accept it whenever it comes to her. On the ride back, the three of them talked much more than on the way down, with Masha finally excited and not feeling the pull of the tragedy that summer.